بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. We recited up to ayah number 50 of Surat AlAhzab last time, and today inshallah we'll do 51, 52, and maybe a bit of 53. We'll see how far forward we can move. Not to sound redundant, but to quickly kind of recap or remind everyone of where we are and what we're doing here. Reciting Surat AlAhzab is the beginning of a cluster of surahs. It starts with Ahzab, ends with Zumar. These surahs talk about the concept of obedience, of ta'ah, of submission and following the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It looks at that issue from a number of different angles, and it's of course a central topic within Islam. Obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everything basically that the deen is built on. So looking at that from a number of different angles is extremely instrumental and important in terms of us learning our own deen and knowing how to do it. So Surat Al-Ahzab is the first surah within these clusters, and it talks about submission and following the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when things are difficult, when it's awkward, when it's hard to do so, when it's not something that you find easy to do, and you're not totally comfortable and in agreement maybe even with what's going on. And not to say that what you feel isn't valid, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach us here is that it's all irrelevant. You follow the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regardless of how hard things are and how difficult and how uncomfortable and how awkward. You just follow His word subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what you do. And specifically when they're difficult, that's when you get the most ajr. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you the most. And that's why when the points count the most, when things are hard. And the first example within the surah was the battle of Al-Khandaq, the Confederates, being the most difficult time that the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ went through as a community or as a small country. Gave an example of the awkward or the difficulty of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ making a choice of living with him even though the financial future was not going to change. It was what it was going to be, and it was never really going to improve, and that was of course a difficult thing for them to come by. And then the surah talked about issues of women in Islam, certain rulings that are specific to them, and concepts and maybe commands where they differ from other men. Again, these are issues that are difficult to speak of, and there's an increased level of lack of comfortability when we bring these things up, even for us. And then it moved on and talked about probably one of the most awkward and difficult things for the Prophet ﷺ in his life, which was the problem of Zayd divorcing Zainab, and then himself ﷺ marrying Zainab by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is of course a very difficult thing for him alayhi salatu wasalam. We were then given a method of making this easier, which was dhikr, and the Prophet ﷺ's status was spoken of, just so that we don't misunderstand any of it as we go through the surah, because a lot of his personal issues are going to come up and be put on display for us to read about and learn about and think about. So his status ﷺ needs to be maintained. And then last time what we talked about was not the final chapter, but moving towards the end. We're actually coming quite close to the end. There's not much left of the surah, 3 pages. Today we'll probably read maybe more than half of one of them. It's talking about the Prophet ﷺ's specific commands regarding his wives, regarding marriage, something that was specific to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Now where's the awkwardness or the lack of comfortability here is that this is something specific to him alayhi salatu wasalam. We're not the same, meaning we're not treated in the same way. Accepting that as a Muslim, accepting that alayhi salatu wasalam is treated differently, is viewed differently and dealt with differently, that is the normal part of accepting the deen. Alayhi salatu wasalam finding no haraj. The word haraj is there many times, and if you're looking for a word that is repeated in Surat Al-Ahzab, you'll find the word haraj. Every once in a while it's repeated. Distress, lack of comfort, right? Feeling that this is something hard, awkward to deal with. The Prophet ﷺ was commanded not to find distress in the commands and the rulings that were made specific to him alayhi salatu wasalam, and what we recited last time regarding his choice of wives and what was made available to him alayhi salam during his life. Even though he didn't choose to do any of what the surah actually made available to him, but the fact that it's available to him is a part of accepting the deen. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made available to his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You accept or you don't. Of course we accept as a Muslim. Why? Because the central ayah of this whole surah, right? The surah number 36. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It's never been permissible for a believer, whether man or woman, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a decree or gives a command, for them to have an option of accepting or not accepting. You accept. There is really no option in the within the story, no matter how difficult or how distressful or how awkward it may seem. Okay, so now just kind of to recap quickly what we have talked about in the last number of weeks. We'll start from ayah number 51. Inshallah, I'm going to try and finish the page. The longer ayat, and there's and the information is easier to explain because we spent a lot of time speaking about the ayah before last time, because I kind of went through the background last time. So here's just the continuation, just to bring the picture to a full to bring a full understanding, inshallah. Okay, we start from ayah number 51. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ترجي من تشاء منهن وتؤوي إليك من تشاء.
ترجي من تشاء منهن وتؤوي إليك من تشاء.
So you see there's three mudud, right? So tasha, both of them, there's a med on the alif, it's a 4 count, and then watu'wi on the ya, there's also a 4 count. So there's altogether in med there are 12 counts in the small phrase that we recited. وَمَنِ ابْتَغَيْتَ مِمَّنْ عَزَلْتَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكَ.
ومن ابتغيت ممن عزلت فلا جناح عليك.
ذلك أدنى أن تقر أعينهن.
ذلك أدنى أن تقر أعينهن.
ولا يحزن ويرضين بما آتيتهن كلهن.
ولا يحزن ويرضين بما آتيتهن كلهن.
والله يعلم ما في قلوبكم.
والله يعلم ما في قلوبكم.
وكان الله عليما حليما.
وكان الله عليما حليما.
Alright. ترجي من تشاء منهن وتؤوي إليك من تشاء. So turji and tu'wi are two words, and they're almost the opposite of one another from a linguistic perspective in the Arabic language. And what they mean is something that you push farther away and something that you bring closer to you. So tu'wi, you're bringing something closer. Turji, you're pushing it a bit farther away. And it's symbolic to what the ayah before was talking about. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّا أَحْلَلْنَا لَكَ أَزْوَاجَكَ اللَّاتِي آتَيْتَ أُجُورَهُنَّ وما ملكت يمينك مما أفاء الله عليك وبنات عمك وبنات عماتك. So he had made halal to you, Ya Rasulullah, the wives whom you've already married, and the wives who've already married who are not free, ما ملكت يمينك, and then any other woman from all the Arab world around you. That's why he said بنات عمك وبنات عماتك, your cousins on your father's side or your mother's side, which is basically all of Arabia. Those who performed hijrah from the mu'mins, for you to marry. And he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a number of them by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about the significance of these marriages in last halaqah, and how a lot of these alliances and a lot of the tribes were brought together, and it made it easier for a lot of people to accept the deen. Alayhi salatu wasalam, marrying into different tribes from different backgrounds was a big part of solidifying Islam within the peninsula at the time. So after that, the ayah, to follow up on this, on that concept, تُرْجِي مَنْ تَشَاءُ مِنْهُنَّ وَتُؤْوِي إِلَيْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ, meaning, and then you can choose to defer who you do not want from them, and then bring closer, meaning marry whom you want, Ya Rasulullah. Meaning, from the options we have given you, the ones that you have married before and the ones that you are open for you to do so, choose whom you like. Those who you don't, you can defer away. ترجي من تشاء منهن, whom you want from them. وتؤوي إليك من تشاء, and you bring closer, meaning you marry from them whoever you want. ومن ابتغيت ممن عزلت فلا جناح عليك, and those whom you different, or azalt is different than turji. It's not the same word. It's a bit different. Wallahu a'lam, here what he's talking about, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not about the choice of marriage, meaning those who he didn't marry, whether he wants to marry or he doesn't want to marry them. Here he's talking about his wives, alayhi salatu themselves. Azalt means a wife. When you do azl, is when you have a wife, but you don't go to her as frequently as you go to another wife, or for a certain reason you're not being intimate. وَمَنِ ابْتَغَيْتَ مِمَّنْ عَزَلْتَ, from the wives whom you have, if any of them that you chose to distance yourself from, that you choose later to draw yourself closer again, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكَ, there is no reservations on that. There is no reason for you not to do that. You can do that. فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكَ, there is no blame that is put upon you. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أن تقر أعينهن ولا يحزن ويرضين بما آتيتهن كلهن. This is a long sentence, important. ذلك أدنى, this is more appropriate, or this is better for تقر أعينهن, for your wives to find the cool of their eyes, meaning for them to find comfort when you do that. Ali Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was given the option to marry, and he didn't. He was given Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam the option to go to his wives or not go to them. It's up to him whether he would like to do it equally or not do it equally. But he chose to do it equally, with every single wife, except Sauda, who donated her night to Aisha, because she was a lady at that time. By now she was around 90 something during these ayat. So she was like, I don't need, go to Aisha. There's no point to just come by every once in a while. We can see you. But she wasn't interested in the night. So he chose sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that, of course, learning from these ayat is the fact he was given an option, alayhi salatu wasalam, but he chose something different than the options he was given. The ayat are giving him options, and then his behavior, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, restricted a lot of those options. I mean, he didn't take any of it. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن تَقَرَّ أَعْيُنُهُنَّ, and this will be more proper for your wives to find the cool of their eyes. وَلَا يَحْزَنْ, and for them not to be upset, not to feel sad. وَيَرْضَيْنَ, and for them to be acceptant, meaning for them to find pleasure and acceptance, بِمَا آتَيْتَهُنَّ, with what you offer them, كُلُّهُنَّ, with what you offer all of them, meaning for all of them to find acceptance in what you will give them and what you will offer them. What does this mean? You see, if alayhi salatu wasalam chose not to go to Hafsa maybe this week, she can say, well, this is not fair. You owe me a night. You have to come to my house a night, because that's fairness. So the Quran is saying, no, he doesn't owe you anything. وَمَنِ ابْتَغَيْتَ مِمَّنْ عَزَلْتَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكَ تُرْجِي وَتُؤْوِي مَنْ تَشَاءُ. You do what you like. If you choose to go back to someone that you don't want to, you weren't doing it before, then there's no shame and there's no problem upon you if you do that. You choose who you want to differ from you, and you choose who you want to draw closer. It is your choice, Ya Rasulullah. And this hukum is there so that the wives will find no problem. When you know that you're not owed something, whatever you're given, you're happy with it. When it's not your right. If you know it's your right, you start fighting for it when it's taken away. True or not true, right? If I know this is my right, I'm owed this, when it doesn't come to me, I fight for it, I get very upset. But when I know I'm not owed anything, I have no grounds to ask for anything at all, then whatever I get is a bonus. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy. That's why ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى, this ruling exists. Adna, it's more proper for three things. For them to find the cool of their eyes, for them not to be sad, and for them to be accepting and happy with whatever the Prophet ﷺ offers all of them. However, ﷺ, even with this ruling, he chose to do it fairly every night. He chose to do it fairly. He never stopped doing it fairly. ﷺ, except the Sauda, who at a certain point she donated. She said, I don't go to someone else. Wallahu ya'lamu ma fi qulubikum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in your hearts. This is not the first time something like this has been in the surah. It has been a very clear indication that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about those things that are unseen within the human soul and the human heart. It's not the first time the surah has talked about the psychology of things. We found it very predominantly in the story of the Confederates at the beginning of the surah. Now again it's going to come a few more times. And kind of latifan khabira, right? Another point. So you'll find it all through the surah. It's talking about what's inside. Jalla Jalaluhu, when he gives rulings, he knows what we feel and what we think. This is not something that is a mystery to him. We find out these things every day as we go along. We learn more and more about how we function as human beings on the inside. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to him, this is not news. Wallahu ya'lamu ma fi qulubikum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you have in your hearts, the feelings that you have and the thoughts. So he made these rulings, he put them out there. Just in case one day you ask, well, why did the Prophet ﷺ have more than four? And why is it that some nights he wasn't here and he was there? And why? Well, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded for him. These are the options he gave him. This is what he was given. He chose many of these options. He chose not to take sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of his own integrity, out of his own generosity of his spirit sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they were offered to him, and because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you think about in your hearts and in your minds, what goes through, He made these ayat so you can recite them, so you don't have any grounds to question him sallallahu alaihi wasallam or to question his behavior. Does that make sense? Because or else it would become very easy to say, well, a man in Islam, if he's going to marry, he can marry up to 4 with a lot of conditions, a lot of financial conditions that apply, correct? If you're married to a woman and she's taking, maybe, let's say you're quite wealthy, so you have around $3,000 a month that is just for her and her kids to do, and she's living in a spacious house, you want to marry another woman, then you have to have the exact same amount and the exact same type of house waiting. You have to be well off if you're going to marry again. You can't say, okay, whatever you have, now we're going to cut it in half. No, that's not how it goes. That's not how things are done. Meaning you could lose money later on, or you won't be as wealthy, so everything is cut down. But during the time you get married, you don't marry and then divide what you were giving to your first wife and her household in half between 2 women. That's not how it's done. You marry, you have to have the financial ability. You're well off enough to start something different. That's one of the financial conditions that apply to a man who wants to marry a second wife or a third wife or a fourth. But why did Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have more than that? Why did Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have none of that when it came to money? Isn't that we just recited two stories before? He had nothing. He basically was coming home with nothing, and the wives were getting upset because no actual wealth was being brought into their homes. Their homes weren't. They couldn't improve any of their houses. They weren't improving anything. Things were staying exactly the way they were. And just saying that, why is that okay? And then people can come and start asking, well, is that proper? So the ayat ended the discussion. Inna ahlalna lak, we have made halal for you the following. This is for you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Different from others. Accept that, you don't accept that, that's your choice. But that's how the deen is. And this is what Surat AlAhzab talks about. Accepting the things that you may not enjoy accepting, the parts of the deen that are either very difficult, very awkward, uncomfortable, doesn't make it, you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then you look at his character sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll find much ease. Find much ease in his character sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't enjoy wealth while his wives didn't alayhi salatu wasallam. He didn't go out of his way looking to marry from specific women from certain ages. He didn't mistreat the wives that he had. He didn't divorce any of ummahatil mu'minin, any of the mothers of believers radiallahu anhunna. All of them stayed. We have no evidence whatsoever that the Prophet ﷺ ever divorced a woman. There's no evidence that of any level of authenticity. I mean, you'll find narrations that are completely unacceptable from an authenticity perspective, but nothing that is reliable that the Prophet ﷺ ever divorced anyone. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So are you saying the idea here? Turji wa tu'wi, do what you want. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَلِيمًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been the most knowledgeable, the all-knowing. He knows what's in your heart, so He's the all-knowing. Halima. It's very specific. It's not very many times in the Quran. What is more common in the Quran? Yes, Alim and Hakim is way more common in the Quran because they work together very nicely for a lot of different situations. He is the all-knowing and He is the all-wise. So you should be good. Because when someone tells you to do something, you question 2 things. Whether he understands everything regarding the situation, or are certain parts of the situation unknown to him. Because if certain parts are unknown, then he's not well informed to give you any advice. And then you need to know if he's perfectly informed, does he have enough wisdom to tell me to do anything anyways? He may know everything but have no wisdom, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alim and Hakim, it's in the Quran many times, He knows it all and He's the most wise. So you're good. You're good to accept everything He tells you subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why it's so commonly repeated in the Quran. Now Alim and Halim, or Alim and Halim, much less commonality. It's not there as much. But the concept here is a bit different. So He's the all-knowing subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this time we're not talking about knowing circumstances or situations or environments that would allow Him to be wise when He tells you to do something. No. We're talking about Him knowing something that would, when you knew it, would cause you to be extremely upset with the person once you found out. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, one of the things Imam Ali says, قال لو خيرت يوم القيامة بين أن يحاسبني ربي وأن يحاسبني أبواي لاخترت ربي. If I was given the ability to choose يوم القيامة, whether God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would judge me or my parents would judge me, I would choose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, what is the significance of that saying? Well, when you think about it, if Jahannam is there, of course your mom is standing there, she's looking at Jahannam, she's looking at it, of course she's going to, whatever, just forgive him and let him go. I don't want him, my kid, my baby to suffer. But you don't know that for sure. You don't know that you're actually more merciful towards you than your Lord is. Maybe as your mom is saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows her one of the things that you did that she never knew about, that you lied about. And then, so you did it? It was you? All these years it was you. You're the one who said that you actually did that? After we talked about it and you told me you didn't, it was you? And she get upset to the point, well, throw him in Jannah, khalas, he deserves to be, but you can upset a human being to the point where they'll lose whatever compassion they had for you. It's quite common, it happens all the time in life, right? They'll regret later, but at the moment they can lose that compassion. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Halim. Al-Hilm is literally patience. Sabr is not. Sabr is perseverance. They're very different. Or maybe they're not that different. Maybe we just made them different in the way that we use them. But sabr is a bigger word. Sabr is the umbrella word, right? This is like shukr is an umbrella word. And then under sabr, there's a lot of different meanings. One of them is hilm. One of them is patience. One of them is controlling yourself. One of them is not acting drastically towards something that would otherwise render a very harsh response. So Allah ya'lamu ma fi qulubikum. He knows what's in your hearts. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been Alim, all-knowing, and Halim, very patient with his servants. So He didn't punish anyone for things they thought of or said regarding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't. And He put these ayat instead. Alright, you're wondering, you're questioning him sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of, alright, this is why he did what he did, and this is why it's okay for him to do what he is doing, because he is Rasulullah and I've made it halal for him. And I will not punish anyone for thinking or saying whatever they thought or whatever they said. Does that make sense? So that's why Alim and Halim. So here it's a different type, not the knowledge of surrounding circumstances that would allow you to be more wise when you give advice. It's knowledge of something that could make you respond in a very violent or in a very drastic way. So having hilm, having patience at the same time would make it much easier. Okay, recite inshallah the ayah after it. Now the ayah after it is also a ruling. And you can see the ruling is going to make a huge difference. Now a huge shift. It's the same concept, but the same topic, but a shift towards a different ruling. Okay. لا يحل لك النساء من بعد.
لا يحل لك النساء من بعد.
ولا أن تبدل بهن من أزواج.
ولا أن تبدل بهن من أزواج.
ولو أعجبك حسنهن إلا ما ملكت يمينك.
ولو أعجبك حسنهن إلا ما ملكت يمينك.
وكان الله على كل شيء رقيبا.
وكان الله على كل شيء رقيبا.
لا يحل لك النساء من بعد. It started out this chapter, يا أيها النبي إنا أحللنا لك أزواجك. It started with, He made halal for you the following. He went through a list of things and talked about what He's allowed to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the two ayat. And then immediately after it, لا يحل لك النساء. It is not halal for you من بعد, for you to marry women from now on, من بعد. ولا أن تبدل بهن من أزواج. Nor for you to divorce one woman and then, so it's not about the numbers. Just in case it's understood from this, you're not allowed to marry more, that the number was the problem, but as long as he has less than 10, he can divorce. And no, it's not the numbers that are the problem. وَلَا أَن تَبَدَّلَ بِهِنَّ مِنْ أَزْوَاجٍ. Or to change, to divorce a wife and then say, okay, well I have, I'm less, one number less so I can marry. No. وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ حُسْنُهُنَّ. No matter how much you're impressed by the women. Husn is not just beauty. Jamal is just beauty. Jamal is just beauty. Husn comes from the concept of excellence, ihsan or hasan, something that is done very well, something that's very good. So husnuhunna means even if you are impressed by their excellence or by their character, or whatever you're impressed by. Illa ma malakat yaminuk, except a wife who is not free. except if you marry a wife who isn't free, which is called mulk yamin. And this is something commonly misunderstood. When you marry a woman who is free, there's a full contract. When you marry a woman who is not free, which is mulk yamin, there's a contract, but it's just not with the same, it doesn't have the exact same conditions, but there's still a contract. The notion that you could just have as many mulk yamin as you wanted and they were just women that you could do whatever you want with. No, there was a contract of marriage here. It's called, but it's just the term that is used is called mulk yamin, but it's a contract of marriage. There's just different conditions that apply to this contract. The conditions, for example, she gets half the mahar of a hurra, right? And if she makes a mistake, then she's only, meaning if she commits zina, she's only punished half the punishment that a lady, a free lady would be. So there's certain conditions that apply, but it's still a contract. It's nothing different. So as far as free ladies go, you're no longer allowed to marry any new ones, nor are you allowed to divorce the ones that you have in exchange. إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ يَمِينُكَ. You can add to mulk al-yamin if you want. Did he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? No, he didn't. It was Mariya. It's the only narration they have is that Mariya al-Qibtiyya was a mulk yamin at the beginning and then became a zawja. And another narration that she was a zawja from the beginning. So we don't have, we have no authenticity regarding that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had mulk yamin in his life alayhi salatu wasalam. I mean, there's actually no authentic narrations of the fact that he had them, or that he actually was there a number or the names. So the authenticity that we have is regarding his wives, alayhi salatu wasalam, the wives, the names that we talked about last halaqah or the halaqah before. So right after he was told in the 2 ayat before that this was made halal to you, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Immediately after it, لا يحل لك النساء, from now on, من بعد, meaning from now forward, you can't do this anymore. إلا ما ملكت يمينك, except what you have as wives who lack freedom. But he never chose that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, another option that he didn't take. He didn't have mulk yamin, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would يعتقهن عليه الصلاة والسلام. I mean, he would set them free. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ رَقِيبًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been the one who looks over and watches everything. Raqaba, in Arabic, raqaba is for someone to watch over something. It's for someone to be observing. So a regulatory or a regulative body it would be called jihat raqaba. So if you go to the Middle East, the regulatory body, any part of the government that's a regulatory body, then it'll be raqaba with taftish. They call it in Syria and I think in Jordan as well. Taftish is investigation. So raqaba is when people are regulating you. You're being watched. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ رَقِيبًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been upon everything, someone who is regulating things. Or he's watching over, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this, when you hear, and of course that's different than Alim and Halima a second ago. Extremely being the all-knowing and the very patient towards those who had thoughts that maybe they shouldn't have had regarding what he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the options he was given. But then this ayah is not talking to everyone, it's talking to him. You are not allowed to marry.
And this ayah was revealed at what time?
So this ayah was a bit after the ayah before.
No, I mean in his life.
The time? So this is the best estimation we have is that is a year number 6 or 7, like at the end of 6, beginning of 7. That's the best estimation that we have. But the thing is that these 3 ayat that we just recited, there wasn't a long period between them. Meaning the first 2 ayat didn't come and then this ayah came a long time later. No, they came relevantly in the same period, meaning almost even together. The reason why I said that is because that these ayat, when you look at them, you say, well, it doesn't make, why is the second ahlalna and then a second later la yahillu? Because the point of this ayah was talking about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made halal and what he didn't make halal. And this is his ruling. You submit to it. We submit to it, we submit to what was made halal to him, just like the Prophet ﷺ submitted to what was made not halal to him a minute later. So it's not an issue of our choices. It's not about what we like and what we don't like. The first 2 ayat, something made halal for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you and I have to accept. And immediately the ayah after, it's not acceptable. Why would that ayah be? Why would he tell him in the Quran? Why would he just, let him know, alayhi wasallam, without, just leave it open, right? And so the idea, there was no, why would this ayah come in the Quran to begin with? لا يحل لك النساء من بعد. I remember I read one of the Mustashriqeen, one of the Orientalists, had written a small essay on a number of ayat that confused him. I'll look up the name, inshallah, and I'll try to share it's an old article. One of the ayat that confused him in the Quran, because for them, their opinion is that the Quran is written by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So he's confused by this ayah. Why would he write this ayah? Like what could this, the purpose could this ayah possibly serve for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in terms of what he was doing? It serves nothing. And in Surat AlAhzab, there's many ayat that, why would these ayat even be there? Right? Like if you're writing the Quran yourself, if you're, وَحَاشَ لَهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, he never did alayhi sallallahu, he never would. But why would you have this ayah in the middle? لا يحل لك النساء من بعد ولا أن تبدل بهن من أزواج ولو أعجبك حسنهن, even if you're impressed by their excellence. وكان الله على كل شيء رقيبا, he's watching over everything you do. Why would that be there? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The concept is obedience. This is the whole point of the surah, is submission. You accept and you follow. What you like, what you don't like, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, doesn't make a difference. No one's asking that, no one's interested in that part of all this. So we accept what was made halal for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just like he accepted what was made not halal for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a minute later. When he was told immediately that this is not halal for you anymore. Does that make sense? And they all came together just as a statement. So the history here is not important, it's the statement that's important. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أحللنا إن لا يحل. He will say that this is halal and this is not halal, to whom he wants, when he wants, and you accept it. If you're a Muslim, you submit and you accept and you obey. Go ahead.
So they were married after this?
No.
So he was already...
Yeah. So at this point he had Sauda bin Zam'a and Aisha, Siddiqa, Hafsa, bint Umar, and Zainab bint Khuzayma, and Zainab bint Jahsh radiallahu anha, and Juwayriyah bint al-Harith, and Maymuna bint al-Harith, and Salama, Hind radiallahu anha, and Habiba Ramla bint Abi Sufyan, and Mariya al-Qibtiyya, and Safiya bint Huyay bin Akhtab. All of them were there. All of them were there. Radiallahu anhun at that point.
The story about the Coptic slave was not authentic. One from Egypt?
Yeah, so I talked about her a second ago.
Yeah, you said it's not authentic.
So it's not authentic that she was a slave when he married her. That was not authentic. What's not authentic is that he married her on a contract where she was still a slave. That is not clear. He may have, and then she became
And they even have it into the Tafseer of the book that he married her after the ayah was revealed. But
we don't have any authenticity for these things. Yeah. When it comes to timelines, it's very hard to establish timelines, and I've talked about that a number of times before.
Belonged to Jewish tribe, Sayyida Maria Qibtiyya.
No, she was the gift from al-Muqawqis, Azim Misr. So the leader of Egypt had sent her as a gift to the Prophet ﷺ. So the narrations say one of two things: either he married her as a mulk yamin, as a slave, and then later on she was granted her freedom, and she bared Ibrahim for him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Another narration is that he married her as a free woman. And she, of course, she converted in both stories. She became a Muslim, radiallahu anha, in both she was al-Mu'mineen in both stories. But to establish that she did it after this timeline is impossible. Like for you to to say that after this ayah he did, it's impossible to do that. Like it's literally, it's impossible. You can't do it. Because when it comes to timelines for these things, no one can, I can't authenticate exactly when this ayah was revealed. I told you, we think it's at the end of 6 or early 7. I could be off by a year and a half or 2 easily, meaning there's more than one narration. When it comes to when Maria was sent, but we don't know for sure either. What is much more proper for us to believe and to work with is that the Prophet ﷺ stuck to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to stick to in the Quran, because had he not done that, then people would have immediately noticed and have a lot of things to say about these things. But that's not the point of the surah. It's more of the fact that he makes halal subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he makes not halal. For us or for him sallallahu alaihi wasallam is an issue of acceptance and submission. We can like it, we cannot like it. It doesn't make really much of a difference. Does that make sense? And that is the end of this chapter. The chapter after it, we're going to start inshallah right now to recite, is a bit different, but there's a lot of similarities. Meaning we're still inside the house of the Prophet ﷺ. You can see a lot of this is happening inside the house. Very distressful for him ﷺ, that these things we're talking about very personal issues for him. Talking about his marriages and his divorces and his wives and things his wives did and things he was allowed to do regarding that. And now we're going to enter his house on a different in a different way. We're going to talk about people visiting him ﷺ. I want you to imagine if you lived back in the day, right? You were in Medina. How many times a day would you try and go sit with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Right? After salah, you'd be standing at the hey, Rasulullah, I want to go catch a Ya Rasulullah, you have a minute? I want to throw something. Ya Rasulullah, I have something. How many people you think are doing that every single day? Or you'll come in knocking on the door, Ya Rasulullah, I have a problem. Do you have like 10, 15 minutes? It's only 5 minutes, Ya Rasulullah, but it goes on for 3 hours. But it's only 5 minutes initially, and then it goes on forever. And people are standing there knocking on the door, waiting for him. So I said, sometimes people waiting beside the house, maybe as he walks away, they can talk. This is always happening to Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There's no evidence anywhere in the seerah, by the way, that he ever got upset or angry with anyone. But please don't treat other Islamic scholars of any capacity, anywhere you go, with the same expectations of who he did, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Please don't. You don't have the right to do that. Don't do that. Hold yourself to the standards he put, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Don't hold other people to the standards he put, Alayhi Salatu Wasallam. It's not fair. It's just not fair. But Alayhi Salatu Wasallam had that standard. He never frowned at anyone. He never mistreated anyone, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, no matter what they did, until this ayah was revealed. And the Sahaba were like, we had no idea until we read this ayah that this was happening. We had no idea. This is totally news to us, that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there's certain things Alayhi Salatu Wasallam is being bothered by. We didn't know. We're sorry, Rasulullah, because he never let it. He was too polite to let anything show. Examples of that is Alayhi Salatu Wasallam would people would come and visit, and he would bring them in, and they would sit for too long. They would sit for a good hour, and they'd keep on sitting, and people would leave, and the people were still sitting. So the Prophet ﷺ would say, okay, stay for food, and he would have Aisha start, or whoever's house he is staying, prepare some food for them, and they would sit around waiting for the food, and then eat the food, and then after the food they would have, sit, and then sit for 3-4 hours at his place, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And continuously this would happen on almost a daily basis. He had people who would come in for long periods of time, sometimes just wanting to chat. Just want to have a conversation. They're bored. I met people like that who are bored, have nothing to do, just want to sit, and you're busy, you have a million things that you're waiting for you, but they just want to sit and talk. Everyone has something going. Alayhi Salatu Wasallam has a ummah to run, and they just want to sit down and talk about the weather or whatever is going on. Alayhi Salatu Wasallam is sitting there. They're in his house. He can't tell them, leave. Imam al-Shabi, Rahimahullah. Imam al-Shabi is the teacher of Abu Hanifa, and one of the students of Ibn Abbas and Mas'ud. He was one day, he was sick, so a man came and visited him. So he visited him, and he sat for a long time. So he told him, Ya Imam, لا أكون قد أثقلت عليك. I hope I wasn't too bothersome towards you. فقال أنت ثقيل علي وأنت في بيتك. You are bothersome to me even when you're staying in your own home. Forget it. And there's actually books that were written talking about أخبار الثقلاء. Talk about the stories about those who are just in Arabic we say t'ildam. It's a very, 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 very common usage, which means you have thick or heavy blood. Now it's a figure of speech that means you just don't know. You're just bothersome. You don't know. Your jokes are annoying. When you stay too long, you just all that. It's called fuqala. Those are just heavy. They come and they just make your life. You're just not happy, and you need one to go. So يقول بعض التابعين talking about this ayah قال أتت هذه الآية فأدبت الثقلاء. This ayah came and it gave adab and manners to those who are like that. Maybe you should learn how to kind of deal, because alayhi salatu wasallam was not it was a normal story. The level of fame that he had, alayhi salatu wasallam. Some people would come from far away, from maybe 1,000 kilometers away, coming to ask him a question or to spend some time with him. Right, and then other people were just had nothing to do. Alayhi Salatu had to he was an educator. He was a role model. He needed to do the job that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala gave him to do, and he also needed to take care of his wives and of his children and their children. Never forget that. I hope when you're thinking about him Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in your life, in your mind, that you recall that his wives, alayhi radiallahu anhunna, had children that he himself Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took on the responsibility of caring for. Right, so the wives like Habiba, Ramla had 3 children. Salama had Salama, 1 child, and there's a narration that she had another one, but it's not clear. Juwayriyah, Maymuna, most of them were married before and had children in their homes. The Prophet ﷺ, before he married these wives, he had in his house with Khadija 2 children. Khadija had 2 kids. Hind and Hala had 2 kids who were in the house, and he had Zayd and Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima and Ruqayya and Kulthum and Zaynab. There were 8 individuals living in his household, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was taking care of them. Not all of them his biological children, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then later on things were very similar. And then Zaynab, his daughter, had kids, and Fatima had kids, and Ruqayya, they had kids, and then he had grandchildren as well. He had a big family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't, and so you have to balance. How are you going to do what he's doing, alayhi salatu wasallam, in terms of being the prophet and the role model and the teacher and the educator and the messenger of God and the leader of the not just the congregation but the ummah itself, and a family person, and then the dude who's sitting in the house and just not getting up and going. So how does that all work? And this is what the ayah talked about. So It's another example of something that is difficult to speak of. But then there's another detail in this, because you think, oh, that's simple. I should be there definitely to teach those people to listen. But there's another part. Alayhi has to bring in guests all the time, right? He has to bring guests in all the time. Regarding the timing, that was addressed here. But he can't stop bringing in guests. طيب, al-Mu'mineen is sitting in a room that maybe has an extension, maybe some of them didn't. The man would come in. We don't know where this man came from. He came from a different tribe, maybe 500 kilometers. We have no idea who this guy is. There's 3 or 4 of them. And they sit, and al-Mu'mineen is sitting right there in front of them. And so is the Prophet ﷺ. If it was once every week or 2-3 weeks, no problem. But every day, multiple times, men are coming in and out of the house with al-Mu'mineen sitting there. Any of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen was something that was uncommon for Arabs and was uncomfortable for the Prophet ﷺ and for Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. And Umar al-Khattab is the one who actually noticed that. He was one of the things he noticed. قال يا رسول الله يعني لو أمرت نساءك يحتجبنا. Can you tell your wives to put like a barrier or something, put up a curtain or just put up a hijab? Because men are coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And he was concerned for his own daughter, Hafsa. This is, people are coming in all the time. I can't say no to people who are knocking on the door, want to come in. He has to bring them in. But it was so common, and so there's a specific ruling here again. So another ruling that is uncomfortable, that we'll talk about hijab. Something specific to the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, but something also not specific to them, meaning that is something that is that's going to be common for all women, Muslims. This is something that till this day is uncomfortable and awkward and difficult for Muslim women. Is it time for that? Not yet. For Muslim women all around the world, the issue of hijab and dealing with it. And the word hijab is going to come here. It's probably the only place in the Quran that the word hijab is actually going to come and be used, like the actual word itself is going to be talked about. So we'll recite the ayah, inshallah. It's 9:45 today, isn't it? Or am I? Yeah. Right? So we still have, okay, good. So we'll start reading the ayah. I'm not sure if we'll finish the whole thing, but we'll try. Jazakallah khair. All right. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تدخلوا بيوت النبي
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تدخلوا بيوت النبي
إلا أن يؤذن لكم إلى طعام غير ناظرين إناه ولكن إذا دعيتم فادخلوا. So if you recited continuously, you would say غير ناظرين إناه ولكن إذا دعيتم. I'll explain what that means in a moment. فإذا طعمتم فانتشروا ولا مستأنسين لحديث إن ذلكم كان يؤذي النبي فيستحيي منكم والله لا يستحيي من الحق. So we'll stop there for a moment because the other part is a shift of a meaning. So we can stop here safely. يا أيها الذين آمنوا, all those who believe, لا تدخلوا, do not enter بيوت النبي, the houses of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, إلا أن يؤذن لكم, unless you are given permission, إلى طعام, to eat food. This is very specific from now on. Meaning if you just want to go in and chat, if you want to go and chill at the Prophet ﷺ's house, don't. See him outside. See him outside of his home. Like see him in the masjid, see him somewhere else. But if you're going to enter his home, it has to be with 2 conditions. First of all, he has to give you permission, and it has to be for food. Like you're coming in because you're hungry, you want to eat. Because ﷺ would be very upset if people didn't come in his house at all, because he fed a lot of the Sahaba, especially those who couldn't afford food in his home. So like Ahlul Suffah. Ahlul Suffah were people who always rotated into his houses sallallahu alaihi wasallam because they couldn't afford to eat. Alayhi sallam, whatever he had food, he would bring them in, give them food. So from now on, people don't enter his house just to chat. Now this ruling doesn't apply to everyone. It applies to the majority or the general public. It doesn't apply to the families of his wives, alayhi salatu wasalam. It doesn't apply to those who are his advisors or those who are very close, like Abu Bakr and Umar. But it comes to the same thing, because Abu Bakr and Umar are also the fathers of his wives, so it works either way. But this changed things. It changed dynamic for him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Because if someone came and knocked on the door and said, Ya Rasulullah, we want to come and talk, he would always say, Faddal, always come on in. And then, if he stayed for too long, he was going to tell Aisha or Hafsa or Salama, whoever was there, to make some food. And this was very tiring for him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the two conditions that were put is that you enter his home, there has to be permission, means that he has to tell you to come in. He has to be telling, because imagine that this, when that is there, you can imagine that maybe some people didn't wait for permission. Maybe some people didn't, and many of the Arab, wouldn't. They would knock on the door and they would enter, right? And they come and sit, even though they were not told Faddal or come on in or you're allowed to, please join me. So some people had that audacity; they would just walk in. And then another thing is that the purpose for it would be just a general, just a sitting that had no actual. So here it was for food, and there had to be permission. That's the first thing. Right. غَيْرَ نَاظِرِينَ إِنَاهُ. You're not, when you're going for the food, you're not sitting around waiting for it to be cooked. So if the food is being prepared, you're not going to wait for that preparation of the food in his house, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So sometimes to put together, to prepare food, it'll take an hour. That hour, you're not going to sit in there and wait for that hour. غَيْرَ نَاظِرِينَ إِنَاهُ. وَلَكِنْ, however, what's going to happen is the following. إِذَا دُعِيتُمْ, when you're told to come in, فَادْخُلُوا, enter. فَإِذَا طَعِمْتُمْ, so when you eat, because the food should be ready, فَإِذَا طَعِمْتُمْ فَانْتَشِرُوا, then leave, then walk out of the house. وَلَا مُسْتَأْنِسِينَ لِحَدِيث, not sitting around waiting. Isti'nas means, it comes from uns. Uns is literally chilling. Wallahi, it's literally that is the perfect way to explain it in English. There's no better word for uns. It's just when you just want to enjoy someone's company. Uns is استأنس بك, I would like to sit down and enjoy your company. وَلَا مُسْتَأْنِسِينَ لِحَدِيث, not sitting around waiting for him to strike a conversation, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to enjoy his words and his wisdom. And no, none of that. If you're going to come with permission. Come for food. You're going to sit down and wait for food in his house, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You'll come in when you're called in for food. You eat, then you leave. Don't sit around waiting for a conversation, right? إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ. Indeed, that action, meaning the opposite of that, what we explained to you, what you understand what has happened before, كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ, it would harm the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ, and he would be too embarrassed and ashamed and too polite to say anything about it. Wallahu la yastahyi min al-haq. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have no shame towards saying the truth or saying that which is righteous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no shame of haqq. And none of us should have shame of haqq. We should isn't that the whole point of Surat AlAhzab? Lose the distress, lose the uncomfortability, lose the awkwardness, and just do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to do, and be much more open. Isn't that what we're kind of shifting to in Surat AlAhzab? You feel like as you read Surat AlAhzab, slowly, your mentality and your heart shifts toward being less closed towards His commands, being more open to accepting them, not feeling distressed, not feeling awkwardness, not feeling shame, not caring what other people have to say. Isn't that what when the Prophet was told, وَتَخْشَى النَّاسَ, and you fear or you revere the opinions of people. وَاللَّهُ أَحَقُّ أَن تَخْشَى, but Allah is more deserving of your reverence. Well, His opinions are more important. What He has to say is more important. So you can feel that even as we read the surah, slowly we shift from being very ashamed of the opinions that we carry, ashamed of the commands that we need to follow, to slowly not feeling that shame, not feeling distressed, not feeling awkward, not feeling uncomfortable, and accepting what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do, and do it with an open heart and an open mind. And I think and I feel the goal of Surat AlAhzab as you go through it is to achieve that in our hearts and in our minds and in the way that and we were given a small pearl of how to do it, right? اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا. We're given here, do this, it'll help you along the way. It'll make it easier for you, inshallah, for you to achieve this. The Prophet ﷺ was very embarrassed to tell a group of people who had come in an hour before food, ate, and now are sitting 2 hours after food. Can you please leave? I need to rest. I need to lay down. I need to speak to I have things to do. He would sit and he would speak and he would listen to ﷺ day after day. Imagine for years. Imagine that this happened for years before the Quran came and made this clear. Wallahu la yastahyi min al-haqq.
Istihya is the same as hiya.
It comes from the same concept. Haya and khajal aren't the same thing. Haya and khajal are very different. Khajal is being embarrassed or ashamed. Haya is different. I use it figuratively. Like when I say that he was not ashamed, not embarrassed, I use that figuratively. Of course, the concept of embarrassment and shame does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyway. But haya, if you want to take it philosophically and break it down, I mean what it means, is for you not to accept upon yourself doing something that is beneath you. That's what haya is. Like if you want to kind of make it in so many words, it's for you not to accept upon yourself to do something that is beneath you, that you are not created to do, that you should know better than to do it. Meaning you feel that it's improper for you to be viewed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala performing a sin. That's haya. Haya is for you to feel that it's not proper for me to be viewed by Him committing this sin, so you don't commit the sin. That's haya. Khajal is just feeling embarrassed. You're put on the spot, speak publicly, you buckle. And that's just khajal. That's not haya. It's not haya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He uses the word upon Himself, Allahu la yastahyi min al-haq. Example in Surah Al-Baqarah, Inna Allah la yastahyi an yadriba mathalan ma ba'udatan fama fawqaha. Meaning, He does not find it inappropriate. He doesn't find it beneath Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala to say the truth. If you want to kind of explain this in a more philosophical, proper way, just kind of. But again, the figure of speech is important that it makes its way. It's important that we understand what He's talking about, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so that's the first one. Awkward, very awkward. Imagine the awkward of the moment when he recited these ayahs sallallahu alayhi wasallam to the Sahaba. Imagine himself, how awkward he felt alayhi sallam, having to read this. Isn't that how it works? Jibreel tells him, and then he said, okay, right, Ya Ali, Ya Muawiyah, right, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la tadkhulu buyutan nabiyyan. It's about himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But see, the ayat before had just been there. Ma kana ala nabiyyi min harajin, fima farad Allahu lah. There's never been distress or haraj or awkwardness for the Prophet regarding what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory upon him. So alayhi sallam had learned that, and that was done. He didn't feel any more distress. But still, in his heart, he didn't want people to know that was... Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people who were listening to this ayah kind of sunk in their clothing. A lot of people kind of sunk in their clothing and walked out feeling ashamed. Maybe they're the person who has been there for the last week, every day, 2-3 hours, enjoying themselves. Like, yeah, I'm spending time with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, you are, but you're also making his life very difficult. But he's too polite, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Same as Surah Al-Hujurat.
Yeah, exactly. Surah Al-Hujurat has a similar... context to it. It's a bit different, but there's something there. But he was too polite, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to come up and say, "Please leave. I need my rest time." Alayhi salatu wasalam. And that shows you the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, let's complete the ayah. But now you know a hukum that was specific for the Sahaba, right? A hukum that it was important for them to learn, and they followed. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, found that something helpful for him in his life. Is there a parallel to take from this? It's specific, I agree, it's very specific to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam back in the time. But is there a parallel to take from this? Of course. Anyone who has a status that is any form similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in terms of knowledge, in terms of of leadership, in terms, maybe what applies to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam in certain ways, maybe some of it should apply to those who are taking on the roles that he took on sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his life. And maybe we should be very, very aware of that. Maybe it's important for us to be aware of that when we deal with people who have that status like him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you'll see that a lot. I remember when we were younger, we were reminded of this ayah a number of times because we were students of knowledge, and we would go and visit the shuyukh and sit with them for hours learning from them. And then we were reminded that don't forget that you should only be in his house for as long as you need to. The moment you don't need to be with him, leave. He's a human being. He has his human needs that he needs to be able to. And we sometimes forget that because it's so interesting and so beneficial for you to spend these hours with this person. You don't realize that other people are doing the same. You're not alone in this this need or this desire to be with him. Whoever or her, to be honest, anyone who has that level of, and then you end up making their lives very difficult, and they yastahyi minkum, but there's too much, they're too polite to say anything about it. So I think there's a parallel here to be drawn. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, inshallah. Okay, we continue, inshallah, reciting the ayah. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ.
وإذا سألتموهن متاعا فاسألوهن من وراء وراء حجاب
ذلكم أطهر لقلوبكم وقلوبهن
ذلكم أطهر لقلوبكم وقلوبهن
وما كان لكم أن تؤذوا رسول الله
وما كان لكم أن تؤذوا رسول الله
ولا أن تنكحوا أزواجه من بعده أبدا
ولا أن تنكحوا أزواجه من بعده أبدا
إن ذلكم كان عند الله عظيما
إن ذلكم كان عند الله عظيما
إن تبدوا شيئا أو تخفوه
إن تبدوا شيئا أو تخفوه
فإن الله كان بكل شيء عليما
فإن الله كان بكل شيء عليما.
I want to recite the ayah, the next one, so we can finish the chapter. Now the ayah that we read next is a bit complicated in terms of the number of mudud. Take a look at it yourself so that you're prepared. So let's count how many med there are within the first line. So fi, that's 4. Aba, that's another. That's 2. Wala, that's 3. Abna'i, that's another. That's 4. Wala'ikh, that's 5. Wala, that's 6. Abna'i, that's 7. So within the first line there are 7 mudud times 4, that is 28 counts just for the mudud. Forget about how many noon has a shadda on it for tajweed, just for the 2 gunna. So alayhin, that's 2. Aba'ihin, that's another 2. Abna'ihin, that's 3. Ikhwanihin, that's 4. So we have 4 noons and then 7 mudud. So we're going to have to do this very slowly. I'm not going to do it properly in terms of tajweed preferences. In tajweed, you have to, when there's conjunctions, when you're adding something to another, you should always go back to the thing before. Now if I'm going to do that with this ayah, we'll probably finish maybe at 11, just reciting the ayah. So what I'll do is I'll stop and then I'll continue, but acknowledging that is not the most appropriate way to recite it from a tajweed perspective. May Allah forgive us. But it's a very long ayah, and I'm concerned that it'll take a very long time to recite. So we'll start, because this will end the chapter inshallah, and then we'll have something new to start on next week بإذن الله تعالى. لا جناح عليهن في آبائهن
لا جناح عليهن في آبائهن
ولا أبنائهن
ولا أبنائهن
ولا إخوانهن
ولا إخوانهن
ولا أبناء إخوانهن
ولا أبناء إخوانهن
ولا أبناء أخواتهن
ولا أبناء أخواتهن
ولا نسائهن
ولا نسائهن
ولا ما ملكت أيمانهن
ولا ما ملكت أيمانهن
واتقين الله
واتقين الله
إن الله كان على كل شيء شهيدا
إن الله كان على كل شيء شهيدا.
Okay, so now we'll put these all together and this chapter will be over. Again, entering his house sallallahu alaihi wasallam yet again. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا. If you speak to the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا is a figure of speech that means you speak to them about something of a worldly nature. Meaning mata' is just something of life. Do you have how are you doing? How is your parents doing? How is your kids doing? What's going on? Anything new? سألتموهن متاعا. How about can you lend us some lentils or give us some salt or something like that? With that سألتموهن متاعا. So you're speaking to them and issues of mata'. Mata' is just issues of ease, of worldly concerns that aren't urgent. They're not emergencies. They're not of a religious basis. You're not asking a question, Ya al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ummi, tell me about what the Prophet ﷺ said regarding this. No, it's just a chat. Now, before we go on, yes, that is permissible. To begin with, yes, that is permissible. Meaning to speak to a Muslim woman about something that is not specifically is permissible, as long as the conditions of professionalism and proper behavior and adam al-khudu' bil-qawl, as we talked about in the ayat a few pages before, are met and are respected and observed. So it's not haram for you to speak to the opposite gender. Sometimes it's very much it's courteous and it's needed if you work together. It's normal for you to say the words that need to be said. Sometimes you'll be stuck in an elevator or you'll be in the same office, and it's very normal to have these conversations. Now, for the wives Prophet, for the Prophet ﷺ's wives specifically, there was an additional hukum to the hijab that we already have in the deen, which is the woman, she covers everything. Every Muslim woman covers everything but her face and her hands. Besides, to add to that, for the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, was if the conversation is going to be mata', meaning something that has nothing to do, فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِنْ وَرَاءِ hijab, then put another hijab and ask them from behind a curtain or behind a barrier. Meaning put another barrier here. Add another one. Besides the one that is already there, which is the dress code that the Muslim women would carry, add another hijab specifically for the Prophet ﷺ's wives. Why? Because the number of people who entered his home ﷺ was very high. Every day, people were coming in and out, in and out, in and out. So there's a lot of proximity, and we didn't know who all these people were. And the ayah will explain in a moment another aspect to that. ذَلِكُمْ أطهر لقلوبكم وقلوبهم. Indeed, that is purer. There's a high level of purity for your hearts and their hearts when that is put. If someone you're seeing every single day, like the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and they are married to the Prophet ﷺ, there's no possibility of anything happening. What about after? So that was the problem. That some men would think, if I ever outlive the Prophet ﷺ, I would marry fulana. Well, she's al-Mu'mineen, so that status will be something I'll benefit from. And I'm seeing her every single day. So I'm developing a relationship that maybe is ذَلِكُمْ أَطْهَرُ لِقُلُوبِكُمْ وَقُلُوبِهِنْ. So immediately after that, وَمَا كَانَ لَكُمْ أَن تُؤْذُوا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. It has never been permissible or acceptable for you to harm the Prophet ﷺ by speaking, by doing that on a daily basis, by communicating with his wives every single day in a way that has no purpose. مَتَاعَ سَأَلْتُمُهُنَّ مَتَاعًا. It's not a thing that has a goal to it. وَلَا أَن تَنْكِحُوا أَزْوَاجَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ أَبَدًا. Or for you to marry his wives after he passed away. So because of the specific situation that the Prophet ﷺ had regarding his home and the number of people who came in, the faridah of the hijab was made for the ladies for his wives ﷺ specifically. And this is not the hijab that I'm talking about, which is at the covering, because that was already a part of things a long time before. It was an additional barrier that was put between the men and between the women, and that way they could speak to the wives, but there was an additional barrier. Why? ذَلِكُمْ أَطْهَرُ لِقُلُوبِكُمْ وَقُلُوبِهِمْ. That's pure for your hearts and theirs. Because it was never acceptable for you to harm the Prophet ﷺ or to marry his wives after he passed away. That was never an option for any of you. إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمًا. Indeed, had that happened, that had been a very catastrophic thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عظيمة, a great thing. Not in a good way, but in a bad way. And that was a great transgression in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayah after is even more revealing. إِن تُبْدُوا شَيْئًا أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ. If you reveal what you were thinking about or feeling, or you hold it in, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمًا. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows all anyway. Meaning there are those who thought of these things. Remember I told you in Surat AlAhzab, this is going to come up. At the beginning I told you, Surat AlAhzab is going to make everyone, as they listen, is going to feel awkward about things. You're going to feel like it's difficult. What is this? How is this working? Sahaba thought that? Yes, normal. They're humans. They're human beings. If you sit in the proximity of another woman every single day for a long period of time, and you talk about mata', this is the specific thing. Mata' means issues of worldly, grain that has nothing, no specifics, not professionalism, it's not work related, it's not educationally related, it's not religiously related, it's just mata', then yes, that is not tahir for your heart in there. It's not pure, there's lack of purity here. So do you see how the Quran teaches us how to regulate ourselves a bit? Regulate, it's not how it's done. You see this specific situation, there's a lot of chit chat going on. It's not haram, but let's make it pure. Let's put a barrier here. Let's put a barrier. See, that's not how it happened later forever, because Aisha radiallahu anha got on her camel and she led an army one day without a hijab. The hijab wasn't there. Not without the hijab. This is where people don't understand things. They think without a hijab means without. No, that is always there. They're always covering everything but the face and the hands. It's without the extra barrier that was made specific for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, she spoke to the men of the Sahaba face to face about issues that were regarding the death of Uthman radiallahu anhu, or putting together the Quran, or issues like Hafsa and Salama. They did these things because this was not mata'. However, when it's mata' for the wives of the Prophet specifically, because it's a huge transgression for you to marry or to think of marrying one of the Prophet's wives after he passed away, because they're al-Mu'mineen and need to hold on to that status. So there was an additional ruling regarding that. Does that make sense? Is that going to come across properly? In tubdu shay'an, if you choose to reveal what you thought of, أو تخفوا, or you withhold it and you keep it secret, فإن الله كان بكل شيء عليما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed knows it all. And that's telling, it's not clear, right? It's not a clear saying people thought of it. It's saying it from an indirect manner. Yeah, there were thoughts. There were things that were hidden. Maybe it's revealed, maybe it's not, but there were things there. It's okay, they were human. Radiallahu anhum ajma'in. They were human beings. Actually, I find this ayah to teach us a whole lot more than we choose to learn from it. You see, there's nothing wrong with the Sahaba themselves as human beings to feel that, if that was the case, meaning that they were dealing with women on a mata' base, meaning just worldly things, no specific goal, on a daily basis, that could cause them to think in a wrong way. If that could cause them to think in an improper way, then what do you think about us? Understand the idea here? This is for us to learn. When you are dealing with the opposite gender, with no actual, there's no clear purpose of why you're dealing with them, then maybe you should watch out, because things could develop. Thoughts could come. Now, if these thoughts are permissible, meaning she's single and so are you, alhamdulillah, then you will get married. But if she is not, if she's a married woman and you're a married man, then what are you doing? Keep it professional. And if you're not going to keep it professional, then maybe make sure there's a hijab, there's an extra barrier. I'm not saying physical, not necessarily a physical barrier. Some of the wives of Prophet ﷺ's lives, some of his wives in their homes, didn't have a curtain. They just turned away, or didn't physically stay in the house. So sometimes it wasn't just always putting a physical barrier. Sometimes it's how you choose to face someone, speak to someone, deal with someone. Be careful. This is what the Quran is talking about. This is not the first time Surat AlAhzab talked about this. It talked about it a few pages back. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَا تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. And we talked about that in detail in terms of what that means. But I think this is very important. لَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِنَّ فِي أَبَائِهِنَّ. There is no distress, there's no shame, there's no embarrassment, there's no fault, there's no blame upon the wives of the Prophet ﷺ and all women فِي أَبَائِهِنَّ, regarding doing that with their fathers, وَلَا أَبْنَائِهِنَّ, or their kids, their children, their sons. Of course, women is coming in a second. وَلَا إِخْوَانِهِنَّ, or their brothers. وَلَا أَبْنَاءِ إِخْوَانِهِنَّ, or their nephews. وَلَا أَبْنَاءِ أَخَوَاتِهِنَّ, or the nephews from their sisters. وَلَا نِسَائِهِنَّ, or their women friends, or their women relatives. وَلَا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُنَّ, or their slaves, or those whom is mulk yamin to them. وَلَا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُنَّ, meaning this is specific for men who don't fall under any of these categories. Any of these categories is no problem anymore. There's ma'man.
This is the common sense.
Common sense isn't as common as we think it is. But this is what the ayah says. وَاتَّقِينَ اللَّهِ, and show taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be very pious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that you're going to. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدًا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a witness of everything that happens. Are you hearing the ayat and what they're saying? Can you imagine the Sahaba listening to these ayat? Like, go back to the ayah we started last time. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ إِنَّا أَحْلَلْنَا لَكَ We made halal for you the following, and then read the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ himself and the Prophet's wives, radiallahu anhunna ajma'in. They're listening to this stuff. They're listening to these ayat. They're listening to the rulings that are coming in. The halal and the haram, what is permissible, what is not. How to deal with the Prophet ﷺ in terms of entering his home. How to speak to his wives. What people have thought of. What is permissible and what is not for the women in themselves in terms of having that mata without a proper barrier. Does that make sense? All these things they have to listen to. They're very difficult. It changes the dynamics of the social encounters that people are going to have within any given community, and that's hard, and that's awkward, and that is not easy. So that is the final, that's the end of this chapter. The coming chapter is much. I'm not going to say it's fully lighter, but it's a bit lighter. It's not. You're not going to see a huge difference in terms of how much easier it is, but it will be a bit less light until we come to the finale of the surah that will kind of bring everything together, not by summarizing the rulings, but by talking about the concepts that I have shared with you today, meaning or in the last number of halaqat. How many do you have? Are we finished? Is it time? Okay. So inshallah, we don't have any time to talk about the hikmah itself, but I'll give a minute explanation. He says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, astaghfirullah, Ibn Ata'illah Secondary says in his third hikmah, sawabiqul himami la takhriqu aswar al-aqdar. The strong intention or the strong himmah means you have a lot of energy, you want to do something great, and these things don't have the ability to pierce the walls of destiny. That's what he says in his hikmah. And this is connected to the hikmah before. These two hikmah, these two pearls of wisdom, once they're understood, they give a very, very nice comprehension of how we're supposed to deal with that which is ghaib, that which is destined, predestined, we can't control, and that which we can control, which is shahada, which is the seen. So we put these two hikam together, we have a much better command of that concept. Just know one thing, you are required to have a lot of himmah, to have a lot of intention, a lot of strength, a lot of energy and enthusiasm in doing things. However, it will never really change whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has predestined. You can't change that, but you're required to do it anyway. You can't change that, but you're required to do it anyway. But under that is a couple of concepts that we will explain inshallah. Next time, subhanakallah bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka.